Tomorrow morning, millions of children will wake up, put on a backpack, and walk into a building where they will sit still for 6 hours. You did it too. You probably never questioned it, but for 99% of human history, no child ever did this. There were no classrooms, no teachers, no tests, and yet ancient children learned everything they needed to survive in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. So how did they do it? The real answer is far stranger than you think. Because it turns out ancient children may have learned more, faster, and with less effort than children do today. And the way they did it is still wired into your brain right now. Picture a child born 200,000 years ago. She opens her eyes in a world with no books, no alphabet, no numbers written down anywhere. Her survival depends on knowing hundreds of plant species. Which ones feed you, which ones kill you. She needs to track animals by their footprints, read weather in the clouds, make tools from stone, find water in a landscape that hides it. This is a curriculum harder than anything in a modern school, and she will master all of it without a single lesson. How is that possible? The anthropologist David Lancy spent decades studying how children learn in hunter-gatherer and traditional societies around the world, and he found something that shocked him. In most of these cultures, adults almost never teach. There is no instruction, no sitting a child down and explaining things. In fact, Lancy found that in many societies, directly teaching a child is considered strange, even rude. The assumption is simple. Children will learn. You don't need to make them. And they do. The secret is something researchers call observational learning. Ancient children were never separated from adult life. There was no children's world and adult world. There was just the world. A child sat next to her mother while she wove baskets. She watched her father knap flint into blades, sparks and stone chips flying. She followed the group on foraging trips from the moment she could walk. Nothing was hidden from her. Not birth, not death, not danger, not work. Your brain is built for this. Deep in your motor cortex, you have neurons that fire not only when you perform an action, but when you watch someone else perform it. Watching, to your brain, is a form of your doing. Every time that ancient child watched an adult tie a knot or skin an animal, her brain was quietly rehearsing the movements. By the time she tried it herself, she had already practiced it thousands of times, in her head. But watching was only half of it. The other half was something you probably think of as the opposite of learning. Play. The psychologist Peter Gray has argued that play is the original education system of our species. Not a break from learning. The engine of it. When ancient children played, they weren't escaping the adult world. They were rehearsing it. Boys and girls made miniature bows and dug with miniature digging sticks. They built small shelters. They played at hunting, at gathering, at trading, at arguing, at making peace. Every game was a simulation of a skill they would need. And here's the part that should stop you. Nobody organized it. There were no coaches, no referees, no adults setting rules. The children ran their own world, and that self-direction was the point. When a child chooses the game, sets the rules, argues over fairness, and solves the disputes, she isn't just learning to hunt or build. She is learning to negotiate, to lead, to lose, to cooperate. Skills no lecture can teach. There was something else about ancient play that almost no modern child experiences. The ages were mixed. A play group might include a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 13-year-old all together. Researchers call this multi-age play, and it changes everything. The young children stretch upward, imitating kids far more skilled than themselves. The older children learn to explain, to simplify, to care for someone smaller. Teaching, it turns out, did exist in the ancient world. But the teachers were other children. The anthropologist Sheina Lew-Levy studied exactly this among the Bayaka and Hadza, modern hunter-gatherer groups whose lifestyle echoes our deep past. Her research found that children in these societies learn most of their skills not from parents, but from their peer group. Knowledge flows sideways and downward, child to child, in the middle of play. By early adolescence, these children can already forage a meaningful share of their own food. Some Hadza children collect hundreds of calories a day by the time they're 8. Compare that to a modern 8-year-old. What can they do without an adult? Now, you might be thinking this only works for physical skills. Digging tubers, throwing spears. Surely real knowledge, abstract knowledge, needs a school. Here's where it gets stranger. Ancient children carried libraries in their heads. A hunter-gatherer adult typically knows hundreds of plant species by name, use, season, and location. They hold mental maps of territory spanning hundreds of square miles. They know the behavior patterns of dozens of animal species, in detail a zoologist would respect. And all of this knowledge was transferred without a single written word. How? Through the oldest classroom in the world, the campfire. The anthropologist Wiessner analyzed conversations among the Jew/Huansi people of the Kalahari and found something remarkable. During the day, talk was practical: food, plans, complaints, gossip. But at night, around the fire, the conversation transformed. More than 80% of firelight talk was stories. Stories about hunts, about ancestors, about distant places and people, about spirits and danger and kindness. And children were right there, every night, absorbing it all. Those stories were not entertainment, they were data. A story about a hunter who ignored the wind and got gored by a buffalo is a physics lesson, a biology lesson, and a safety briefing wrapped in suspense. A story about a greedy man who hoarded meat and was shunned is a lesson in economics and ethics. Your brain remembers stories far better than facts. Ancient people knew this long before any memory researcher proved it, so they encoded their entire civilization into narrative, and children downloaded it in the dark, one night at a time. There's one more thing ancient children learned that almost never gets mentioned, and it might be the most important one. They learned that they were needed. An ancient child was not preparing for life. She was in it. The berries she gathered went into the real family meal. The firewood she carried kept everyone warm that actual night. The baby she watched was her real cousin, and her attention genuinely mattered. Anthropologists studying childhood across cultures consistently note this. In traditional societies, children contribute real work early, and they are visibly proud of it. Think about what that does to a developing mind. Every day, you get proof that you matter, that your effort changes things. Psychologists today call this self-efficacy, and it is one of the strongest predictors of mental health and motivation we know of. Ancient children were marinated in it. So what happened? Where did all this go? Agriculture happened, then industry. Around 10,000 years ago, human work started to change from varied, skilled, interesting activity into repetitive labor, and children's learning changed with it. The historian of education will tell you that schools, when they first spread widely, were not designed to spark curiosity. Early industrial-era schooling was built to produce obedience, sitting still, following instructions, working on someone else's schedule, doing tasks you didn't choose. Sound familiar? None of this means ancient childhood was paradise. It wasn't. Nearly half of all children in forager societies didn't survive to adulthood. Disease, accidents, and hunger were constant. A modern child's life is safer, longer, and gentler in almost every way that matters. Schools also unlock things campfires never could. Reading, mathematics, science, the compounding of knowledge across generations that gave you medicine and this video. But your brain doesn't know any of that. Your brain was shaped by the old world. It still expects to learn by watching real people do real things. It still expects mixed-age play, self-directed and unsupervised. It still expects stories at night. It still expects to be needed. And when a child's environment provides none of these, the machinery doesn't switch off. It just aches. Maybe that's why children learn video games, slang, and social dynamics effortlessly, with no teacher in sight, but struggle to memorize a worksheet. The worksheet fights their wiring. The playground uses it. Maybe that's why a toddler who watches you cook wants a spoon in her hand, not a toy version. She isn't playing at helping. She is trying to do the oldest thing a human child can do: join in. Researchers like Barbara Rogoff have a name for the way children learn when they're simply included in real activity, learning by observing and pitching in. Rogoff found that children raised this way in indigenous communities of the Americas often show sharper attention and more spontaneous helpfulness than children raised on formal instruction. They watch more carefully, because watching for them has always mattered. You were one of these children once, before anyone tested you. You learned to walk with no curriculum. You learned an entire language, one of the hardest cognitive feats on earth, with no lessons at all, just by living among people who spoke. That was the ancient system running inside you, and it worked perfectly. So tomorrow morning, when millions of children put on their backpacks and walk into those buildings, remember what you now know. School is not how humans learn. It's just how humans learn now. The original classroom had no walls, no bells, and no teachers. It was a fire, a forest, a gang of children, and a world that needed them. And somewhere deep in every child's brain, that classroom is still open, still lit, still waiting for the lesson to begin.